Hey guys, so this is going to be a video about the biggest lie that I think I've ever seen Stefan tell anywhere. And this was kind of what catapulted me, kind of like brought me into this, even wanting to make videos about this stuff and really rethinking my experience at going through Freedomain radio and listening to those podcasts and kind of following his philosophy on how to be freer in your life, and that's what I think a lot of people are doing by going through his podcast. You're trying to feel better about your life. You're trying to become more empowered, and to try to really pin the blame on like what's the reason why society is so bad. That's like I think that's a lot of the reason why people get into Freedomain Radio. And one of the reasons why people get out is because they see things like this, what I'm going to tell you in this video, which is going to concern basically, he said some comments on the Joe Rogan show maybe a year ago about how many defooing podcasts there were. But not many people really debunked this, I would say. I don't think they did. I only saw like one by like True Shibes, who was recently reinstated, by the way. She was an old critic of Stefan's. And yeah, then she got DMCA takedown by Stefan, and then now she's back for some reason. So that's pretty cool. Hopefully it was for legitimate purposes because she wasn't actually attacking any of his listeners or doxing them. But anyways, that's another story, and that has its own ramifications too about him being an anarchist and then filing a DMCA, and there's all this contradictory things there. But this is about just defooing podcasts, right? So what Stefan has said, he said on the Joe Rogan show, and I'll quote, I've done 3,000 shows, of which 3 or 4 have been me talking about this topic. So basically, he said he's only had 3 or 4 shows talking about defooing. This is like a completely mind-boggling statistic, or like a it's just like I couldn't even conceive of it. I couldn't believe that he would say something like that. That was so incredibly wrong, just demonstrably wrong. And you can look at the podcast that I'll put in the link in the description to a post I made on FDR Liberated. That's what I'm reading from right now. But you'll see that there is not 3 or 4 podcasts talking about defooing. And when I heard that, my whole mind, like, it basically exploded, kind of like, uh, yeah, I mean, it just like, it just took me aback, that like this guy would lie like this. And I was like, is he even lying, or would he say something like that? When I knew that it was such an important topic to him, in the first, 1,000 podcasts, or maybe the 1 through 1,500, defooing was an important part of his philosophy. And I have a quote here too that kind of tells you that, yeah, it really is. And he says, defooing is a very core part of achieving freedom. I'm quoting, and it is the ultimate secession. It is the ultimate emancipation. He says, for bad parents. I mean, everyone knows that. So he's kind of saying he's only talking about bad parents, but I don't know. He puts those caveats in, but he is actually, in my opinion, in my experience, he's lumping in everyone. That's my opinion. So I don't want to, inject in my own opinion for you. So you can read this and you can look it up. You can look at it straight, and you can listen to the podcast for yourself. and don't take my word for it, even though I want to. I want to inject my opinion, but I want to stay unbiased too, because I know that's like a more powerful way to express these things. Because he said I've done 3,000 shows, of which 3 or 4 have been me talking about this topic, which is defooing. But you will see that that's simply not the case. So you just go through the podcast below in the FDR Liberated post, and it starts off with him saying, with his podcasts on "But My Parents Are Really Nice," some further explorations on the theory of parental corruption. Right, so he's talking about defooing. He's talking about how parents are bad, and all like that kind of rhetoric. Yeah, you can call it rhetoric. Yeah. But then and then it continues into all these ones. Yeah, false forgiveness will destroy your joy, which is family fantasies, the podcast 238. And if you just keep going, you go down this podcast, you'll see a lot of them with even they're talking about defooing, or there's this breaking with corruption, which is 347, 348, and 350. So you're finally on the move, a roadmap to freedom. And then he talks about. Yeah, there's all these like family letters that you send that people have sent to their parents, their mothers and fathers, about addressing a lot of the things that they've done to them. But he's going through the letters and he's coaching them to leave their family. Like, I swear to you, you just listen to some of these podcasts, and it will remind you of something that's akin or reminiscent of, yeah, of like Scientology. That's what I was thinking of recently, because I just watched Going Clear, the documentary. And it's just a lot of the same kind of shit, like just blaming and like you're leading people to believe in a certain ideology of, your family abused you, and you're just like kind of like shoving in all these ideas about your family, or about and he's just expecting people to believe it and following them and coaching them on it, because he's kind of like he's a respected figure in their life, because he's giving them like I was gonna say lessons, or like coaching lessons on what's the right thing to do for them, because they're trying to make decisions, and so they're going to this guy who they're trying to get help with to make their decisions. But then what he's doing is he's just indoctrinating them. Not even kind of, he's indoctrinating them, well, largely with his own ideas on it, and he's making people do some really crazy things by them believing it. Of course, they have to believe it too, and they have to, take him as that figure, a respected figure in their life, whose advices and recommendations that they would listen to. But anyways, so a lot of these podcasts, like even Christina's Family Letter Part 1, which is Defooing Part 1, that's what it was used to be called, and Defooing Part 2. So even there, that's 2 podcasts, right, on defooing. But then I'm not even, like, this is not even just 2. This is Cracking the Family, which is all about talking about that shit. And then the Collins Show on podcast 631, with another defoo rock star. The disorientation of defooing. This is another topic on his podcast 622, Ask a Therapist number 10. And I'll let you, read through this on your own, because you can just look at some of the titles and the descriptions that have the name Defoo in it. They have it. It's Defoo Communique. It's Defoo Part 2, right? It's Mommy's Letter. And it's Foo Fighter. And defooing is cowardice. He's talking about it, like, even if you were to argue that he wasn't, like, what do you mean? What did he mean by when he said 3 or 4 were me talking about this topic? Maybe he meant it talking about it as an important topic, but that could be for any of these, like Mommy's Letter or the Foo Fighter, and they're talking about their family of origin, or they're talking about leaving their friends too, who once they confront them, on their past kind of transgressions. You kind of bring up this this list, and you have to have conversations with your friends and family to, I don't know, achieve this psychological state of health that Molyneux likes to promote as like the end goal of all of this, right? Is just to be psychologically healthy. Yeah, yeah. What I was talking about was just like all of these. It's either about your parents or about your friends too, and defooing them or like getting rid of them, and kind of. I mean, defooing is actually just kind of a way to run away. In a lot of ways. I mean, of course, it can be used in a good way too. If your parents are really abusive and they're currently, and you can't work through it or something. But it's also a way to just say, cut you off, fuck you. Like I don't, like I don't want to talk to you, blah blah blah. And it's just a really easy way to kind of solve your problems, but it's not really a solution. Is because you completely cut off people who don't agree with you or don't. Yeah, it's a lot of like censorship, like you can't you're not you're incapable of having relationships with people who don't agree with everything 100% of what you believe, or maybe even 80, or you know yeah, 90%. I would imagine Stefan's own relationships or something like that too, something like along that lines, where like 90% of them have to believe pretty much almost exactly what he believes. But then again, I believe he's a cult leader. Um, yeah, as bad as Scientology or something like that, and David Miscavige. Yeah. So, anyways, all I was getting to was that in this post that I've linked in the description, or I'm going to link in the description, I go through a lot of the podcasts that he's had from being, an experienced FDR member from years ago, having listened to many of these podcasts, and I just knew that he was full of shit when he said that on the Joe Rogan podcast. So as someone who I know that he's lying, or he lied on the Joe Rogan podcast about that, and kind of like tried to downplay how many podcasts he had about defooing to make his show seem a little probably less culty to Joe Rogan's listeners, by saying I only have three or four on I only have 3 or 4 podcasts on this topic of defooing. It's just a complete bullshit. He's fucking bullshitting you. So yeah, that's that's all I wanted to say, really. I mean, just I'm just here for people who may not know about this, and they haven't listened to it for as long as me or other people or ex-members, and I'm sure Colleen or other ex-members would tell you the same thing about how many defoo podcasts they were, or even them talking about it, because Colleen's been on several, I think, in the past about defooing with her dad and stuff, and it's like that's even that alone is more than like 3. So, or yeah, probably maybe she's had 2, or and then you could count some other ones. But anyways, just look at this post, and I think um, it'll be really important for you to see that he just lied um, out of his ass. That's what I wanted to say. He just lied, and he's just a fucking liar and a con man. And hope, yeah, and you can look at the podcasts and listen to them yourself, and you will see that they're talking about defooing, and you'll hear him coaching the listeners on how to defoo and why to defoo, and kind of reframing a lot of their stuff, and kind of and psychoanalyzing them too. So that's kind of the general method that he uses to control his listeners, and to kind of kind of take their own thoughts and then kind of mold them. No, 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 don't think like that. Think like this, so I can so you don't have to associate with your family anymore and stuff. And yeah, it's truly, it's fucking disgusting to listen to. So yeah, listen to it yourself. Um, but yeah, okay. I hope you found this informational and helpful. It's a little different, maybe a little longer than usual too. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you later.